The other day I was hanging out with my girlfriend, sitting on the veranda, eating some Tuscan olives and sipping fresh squeezed pink lemonade. And then my mom comes up and says, "TechDweeb, time to come in for dinner." And I says, "No thanks, Mom, I'm just hanging out with my girlfriend." And my mom says, you don't have a girlfriend. There's no one here." And I look over and she was right. The pink lemonade didn't exist. The Tuscan olives didn't exist. I wasn't sitting on a veranda because verandas don't exist. And my girlfriend, my sweet, sweet angel who loves me, she didn't exist either. And you'd think that would drive me into a deep pit of despair, and it did, but not nearly as deep and dark as the pit that I found myself in when I learned that my favorite game console, the PICO-8, also didn't exist. And come to think about it, I'm not actually sure that I really exist either. Just kidding. We're here to talk about PICO-8, a console that doesn't exist. But that's okay, because something doesn't need to exist to be special. Just like my imaginary girlfriend, the PICO-8 has brought me hours and hours of joy and fulfillment. And it can do things my imaginary girlfriend can't do, like play video games, because my imaginary girlfriend doesn't have hands. She lost them in an imaginary olive farm equipment tragedy in Tuscany. But hold up, you say. What does it even mean to have a console that doesn't exist? Well, I was just about to get to that. Apparently your patience doesn't exist either. The PICO-8 is what's known as a fantasy console. What is a fantasy console? A fantasy console is like a regular console, but without the inconvenience of actual hardware. PICO-8 has everything else that makes a console a console. Machine specifications and display format, development tools, design culture, distribution platform, community, and playership. It is similar to a retro game emulator, but for a machine that never existed. So there you go. The PICO-8 is a console that doesn't exist in real life. It exists only in our minds and our hearts. The games feel retro because the resolution is limited to 128 by 128 pixels, and the games can just use 16 colors and 4-channel audio, and the games have a max size of just 32 kilobytes. And the games are really, really freaking good, you guys. These are straight up awesome modern retro games. Games made with the same limitations of a retro console, but with modern game design sensibilities by talented developers. There are lots of ways that you can play PICO-8 games. You can play them through emulation in RetroArch. You can play them right in your browser without any software. And you can play them using the official software created by the company that makes PICO-8, Alexa Lawful, which is the best company name like ever. I think we can all agree on that. The official software is $15 and it's well worth it because you can run it on pretty much any device. And this is how you'll get a perfect PICO-8 experience that you can't get through emulation. And we can't talk about PICO-8 without talking about handhelds, as we tend to do in these parts. And we can't talk about PICO-8 on handhelds without talking about this, the Powkiddy RGB30. This is my favorite retro handheld to play PICO-8 games. I've been obsessed with PICO-8 for the last few days. Seriously, it's becoming a problem. My mom threatened to take away my RGB30 if I didn't put it down and eat something and take a shower. I got this fancy new yellow RGB30 from Lit NXT, which is a store that sends me a lot of stuff to show you guys. I'll include a link to this in the description below if you'd like to pick one up and get some PICO-8 in your life. The RGB30 is perfect for PICO-8 for several reasons. One is that it has Wi-Fi, which is important if you want to use the PICO-8 browser called Explore. Two is that it has a big square screen, and since the PICO-8 games are a square ratio, the RGB30 is ideal for these games. And the screen on this thing is just freaking beautiful in general. Three is that this is running GeLOS, and you can install the official version of PICO-8 on this and have it run natively, and it gets perfect PICO-8 performance. And four, this thing can plug into your TV or monitor with HDMI, and you can hook up a Bluetooth controller so you can play your PICO-8 console in handheld mode or docked mode and get these amazing games on the big screen. There are two ways to find games to play. The first is Explore. That is a built-in app for PICO-8. On the RGB30, you start that up by running Start PICO-8 from the PICO-8 menu. You'll need to be online to do this. It's basically an app store for PICO-8 games where it'll show you new games, a curated list of featured games, early access to games in development, and you can mark games as favorites so you can always find the games that you've discovered. You can also hit up the Lexalawful website and browse through the games there. There's a store page for each game with a description, instructions, screenshots, and you can play the game right there in your browser. Or you can click the little cart button at the bottom left and download the game cart. And then you can create a ROM collection of PICO-8 games that you can copy to your device. That's what I did on the RGB30. I went through all the most popular games on Lexalawful and I just went on a freaking download spree. I created a huge collection and now I'll show you a bunch of them. This is by no means an exhaustive list, just a smattering. A little taste of what Pico games are like and why they're worth checking out. I'm definitely going to do more Pico-8 content in the future. Maybe a top 10 games or hidden gems type video. Let me know what you'd like to see and let me know your favorite Pico-8 games and I'll check them out. And of course, subscribe if you haven't yet so you don't miss that. Okay, enough dilly-dallying, as my Bob would say. On with the games. 8 Legs to Love has you playing as a spider. It's a web building simulator with surprisingly realistic physics and satisfying gameplay. It's one of those things that you'd think would be simple, right? Building a web? Well, actually doing it has shown me that it's really not such a simple thing. And I have a new appreciation for the work that spiders put into their webs because of this game. This is Calacan, a badass shoot-them-up game. It's a typical bullet hell style game. You have 3 ships to choose from and each ship has an attack, a special attack by holding the button, and a bomb to clear the screen. And you'll be dodging lots of bullets, shooting lots of bad guys. It looks amazing, sounds great, hard as heck, and lots of fun. One Room Dungeon is a roguelike action game where the entire dungeon is only one room, but the room changes, so it's sort of like different rooms. I don't know. Anyways, you gotta run around and hit all the switch tiles to clear the room, and then you're taken to a new room. And the bad guys are trying to kill you, and you can't fight back, so it's a mad dash to try and hit all those tiles and collect health in an efficient way before you're murdered. It starts easy, gets hard quick, and I'm terrible at it, but I love it. This here is Birds with Guns, which is pretty much my worst nightmares come true. Birds are disgusting, filthy creatures that scare me, and guns are for Americans, which also scare me. So Birds with Guns is like a double whammy of nightmare fuel for me. The game is fun though. You can pick your bird, and each bird looks unique and plays unique with different starting loadouts. You blast your way through the levels, which are cars on a train, I guess. It's just a simple run and gun shooting game, and it's fun. The Tower of Archeos is a puzzle game, obviously. Your goal is to progress through the tower by clearing out the enemies. Every time you fight an enemy or a group of enemies, you take damage, but you only take the base amount of damage. So your goal is to try to take out large groups of enemies for big XP and suffering minimal injury. When you reach an XP threshold, you level up and you'll get healed up, and you can uncover doors that take you to the next level and chests that have items that help you out. A simple game, but very addictive once you learn the mechanics. This is Coffee Maker. You're a barista and you have coffee orders coming up in the queue and you have to make the coffee. But this isn't a thing where you're like looking through slowly and doing it carefully. No, here you gotta be really freaking quick. You're firing these coffees out at lightning speed. It's sort of like that game Coffee Talk, except way more coffee and none of the talking. Just One Boss is a game with, well, just one boss. That's it. It's a boss fight. The entire game is just one long boss fight. It starts out easy, gets harder and harder, and it's very smart and clever the way the boss evolves into new phases and comes up with new attacks and stuff. And here we have Dank Tomb. This game freaking rocks. It's an action puzzle game where you're exploring a tomb, Indiana Jones style. It's sort of reminiscent of the Legend of Zelda dungeons where there are like levers and switches that you have to find gems to unlock, moving platforms, spike traps. It's just a great puzzle game, a real noodle scratcher. But the icing on the cake is that it looks amazing. And speaking of cake, this is Lil Satan's Cake Quest. It's basically ghosts and goblins. You play as the man himself, Satan. Look at that little guy. Isn't he cute? You're running through a spooky land like a graveyard or whatever, and there are bad guys like skeletons and plants and demons trying to kill you. And when you kill them, they drop cake. and you eat the cake. The cake heals you. And there's super cakes dropped by the tough bad guys that increase your HP, just like real life. And another cake-themed game, Pieces of Cake, is a cute little puzzle game with surprising depth. You need to make a cake, and you have ingredients that it needs to contain. It gets harder and harder to hit this objective though, and you can match tiles by lining up the colors on the edge with the colors of the numbers. It's simple to learn, but it's a real noodle scratcher when you get deeper into the game. One of my favorites on this list today. Let's keep the cake theme going here. This is My Chan's Sweet Buns, one of my favorite PICO-8 games. It's a pretty simple puzzle game. You have orders you need to fill on the bottom, and you select matching horizontal or vertical lines of sweet buns to fill the orders. But it gets harder and harder, so you want to collect stars, which you can get by completing lines of 4. And those stars will give you helpers that will help you get out of sticky situations. So give this a go if you want some of My Chan's sweet buns in your life. Mimic is a puzzle game where you have to, mimic the enemies. You need to copy what they do, and then you become that type of creature. So there's little forest guys. If you want to walk through the forest, you have to become a forest guy. There's a mountain guy and a fish and a bird, and you need to be careful about where you morph because you need to make sure that you can actually reach the end. And the best part about it is that when you touch creatures of the same type, they make sweet love. Oh yeah. Curse of the Lich King is a traditional roguelike game. I'm talking real roguelikes where you move one square at a time and the enemies move on your move, and you have to carefully line up the enemies so you hit them before they hit you. The dungeon is randomly generated, and your goal is to collect items and potions and power-ups and battle enemies and progress deeper and deeper into the dungeon to presumably find the Lich King. I don't know though. I haven't got that far. Here we have Gar's Den. This is a survival roguelike game with Harvest Moon elements. You're exploring a randomly generated dungeon, fighting bad guys, but you're also collecting seeds to grow crops for food, and you can trade items at a store. A really fun, surprisingly deep game here. I can see myself putting a lot of time into this one. Chrysopoeia, or however you say that, is a witch simulator. You have a certain number of days to produce gold from your cauldron, so you need to harvest ingredients in the forest, feed the townspeople to collect gold, buy alchemy recipes, and brew new ingredients in your witch hut. It's super chill, super cute, and also pretty hard to actually do the objective in the amount of time that you need to do it. This is The Lair. It's a beat-em-up style game. You are a knight with a sword and a shield, and you walk and then fights start, and you use your shield to block attacks, and you use your sword to kill stuff. I suck at it, but I love it. This is Pico Man. It's Pac-Man, but PICO-8. And this is Pico Fox. It's Star Fox, but PICO-8. And this is Delunky. It's Spelunky, but PICO-8. And this is Demon Castle. It's Castlevania, but PICO-8. And this is Froggy. It's Frogger, but PICO-8. And this is Bubble Trouble. It's Bust-A-Move, but PICO-8. And last, but certainly not least, it's Celeste. This game started its life as a PICO-8 game, and then it grew and evolved into the multi-platform game that we all know and love. But the PICO-8 version is the real deal. You run and jump, and then you have a magic ability where you can shoot yourself through the air in a direction. You only get one shot though, until you land on solid ground, so you have to think your way through of when you're gonna do your thing, and be very precise with the movements. There's a lot of thought and care that's put into every level, and it's just an overall amazing game. If you only play one PICO-8 game, play this one. It's probably the best PICO-8 game, let's be real. It's an oldie, but a goodie. There are a freaking ton of amazing PICO-8 games, and I can't show them all to you in one video. And in fact, I've saved most of my favorites for future videos where I'll give you my personal top 10 or whatever. So get subscribed so you don't miss that. There are some seriously impressive feats of game design on the PICO-8. Some of them are just kind of tech demos, some of them are short, simple games, but lots of them are full-fledged games that can suck you in for hours. What I like about PICO-8 games is that even though they feel like retro games, they also feel like modern games. And unlike retro games, the library of PICO-8 games just keeps on growing. Retro game libraries are set in stone, but every month there's a whole bunch of new PICO-8 games that you can try and play. If you're into the idea of PICO-8, if you like what you saw here, check out some of these games yourself. And if you're not, and you watched the whole video, then I'm confused. Why did you watch this if you're not into these games? Is it because of me? You just like my voice? You know what? I'm actually totally fine with that. And speaking of being fine with things, I'm fine with ending this video. I'm TechDweeb, thanks for watching, bye bye!